Let's be real. Divorce is one of the toughest things anyone goes through. But what if it didn't have to be this all-out destructive battle? What if you could navigate this time with respect, with dignity? Well, it's not just possible, it's absolutely crucial for healing and for moving on. In this explainer, we're going to walk through a really practical toolkit that's designed to help you do just that.
This quote it really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that painful, confusing feeling of it all. You're in a conflict, a battle even, but it's with someone you once shared a life with, someone you loved. It's all just so complicated. And that's exactly what it feels like, right? A fracture, a shattering. The life you built together feels like it's breaking apart. And just acknowledging that pain, that reality, that's the very first step. It's okay to admit that it's overwhelming. And when things shatter like that, it is so easy to feel completely alone, like you're navigating this huge storm all by yourself. But here's the thing, you don't have to. The resource we're looking at today gives a really clear three-step framework to help you find your way through it all. Reflect, connect, and build.
So, where do we start? Well, the journey always begins with this first step. Reflect. This is all about turning inward before you try to deal with everything happening on the outside. It's about finding your own 2 feet in the middle of all the chaos. And this part is built on one core, really powerful idea. The only person you can truly control in this whole mess is you. Your emotions, your reactions, your behaviors. That's why self-awareness isn't just a nice idea here. It's the most critical first step you can possibly take. So, the first thing this toolkit asks you to do is to just pause and ask yourself the simple but super powerful question, how am I really feeling right now? And we need to go deeper than just sad or mad. Are you feeling devastated or maybe even a little relieved? Are you confused? Being totally honest with yourself right here, that's the foundation for everything else. Okay, next up, you gotta figure out who's in your corner. What supports do you have? This could be your friends, your family, or maybe it's a professional, like a therapist or a lawyer. Just knowing who makes up your support network is a huge step in fighting off that feeling of isolation. And then comes what might be the most important question of all, and it's a non-negotiable one. Do you feel safe? We're talking about your physical and emotional safety here, and it is the absolute #1 priority. If the answer is no, then getting professional help right away is the most important thing you can do. Because let's face it, the stress during this time is just off the charts. So what can you do, like right now, in the moment? The toolkit gives some really simple, practical things you can do for self-care. Deep breathing, a little meditation, maybe some physical activity, or progressive muscle relaxation. These are actual tools you can use anytime you feel overwhelmed, just to ground yourself again. Okay, so once you've done that really important internal work, that reflection, it's time to build a bridge. And that's the connect step. This part focuses on how to have productive, dignified conversations with your ex-partner, which, let's be honest, is often one of the hardest parts of the whole thing. But for these conversations to have any chance of working, you need some ground rules. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about creating a foundation of respect. Things like setting aside enough time so nobody feels rushed, really committing to listen instead of just planning what you're going to say next, and being okay with disagreeing. It's about creating a space that feels safe enough for some real honesty. Yeah, the whole point here isn't to score points or win the argument. It's to be heard and to understand. It's about creating a space where, even when things are super tense, you can still have a constructive conversation. It is possible. And this is what's so great about this toolkit. It's incredibly practical. It doesn't just say, hey, go talk. It gives you actual conversation starters for all the tough stuff. Co-parenting, the logistics of separating, even how to know when to just end a conversation that's going off the rails. These questions can really help open the door to talks that feel way too big to start on your own. All right, so that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the forward-looking part. Build. This is where you take everything you learned from reflecting and the communication skills from connecting, and you use them to start creating a new foundation for your future. And, the toolkit is smart about this. It points out that this build phase is going to look really different depending on your situation. If you have kids, the big challenges are going to be around co-parenting and custody. If you don't, your focus might be more on dividing property or navigating a new social life. Your path forward is unique. Now, here's a really powerful idea that can help you in this building phase. I want you to think of anger as a mask. It's like this protective shell that we put on to cover up other emotions that feel way more vulnerable. So, what's hiding behind that anger mask? Well, it's usually all these other, much more painful feelings, right? Betrayal, fear, powerlessness, rejection. Our brains often just default to anger because it feels stronger, less weak. It's a defense mechanism. But if you can identify the real feeling underneath, that's when you can actually start to process it and build something new. And this is what building really looks like in action. It's getting back out there, it's rediscovering your community, leaning on those people who are in your corner, and finding new ways to connect and experience joy. It's a total shift away from that isolation we talked about in the beginning and towards a future that's full of hope. So you see the path, right? After you move through reflecting and connecting, you actually arrive at a new beginning. It's about taking back control of your own story and starting to look toward the horizon instead of just staring at the past. So if you take just one thing away from all this, let it be this clear three-part path. It's your roadmap. First, you reflect on yourself. Then you connect constructively with your ex. And finally, you build your new future. It's a simple guide, but it's so powerful for getting through a really complex time. And that really leaves us with one last question to think about. What if we reframe this whole experience? What if the end isn't just an end at all? What if it's actually an opportunity, a chance to write a new, more authentic chapter for yourself?